Want. What's up, everybody? I am John Maher from Why We Love Horror. That is Hunter Chambless, the Hitman, from Welcome to Primetime. And this is your May 9th edition of Horror Headlines. Thank you for joining us here on TikTok, live on YouTube, live on X, live on Facebook. No matter where you go, we're inescapable. Hunter, how you doing today?
I am doing amazing. How are you doing today, John?
Doing pretty good. I'm happy to talk about the topics. We got 5 topics to talk about today. Your horror headlines this week. Some big news. If you're ready to go, what's the first topic of the night?
All right, let me go ahead and bring it up from bloodydisgusting.com. Let me go ahead and pull this up. There we go. Crystal Lake update. A24 going a different direction or a different way with the Friday the 13th TV series. This week has brought on a lot of confusion about Crystal Lake, A24, Peacock, and Brian Fuller television series expansion of the Friday the 13th franchise. While reports and rumors spread that A24 are pulling the plug on the series, we told you on Monday that that's not exactly the case. Rather, the project is being retooled behind the scenes. So, what exactly is going on here? Brian Fuller has taken to his Instagram tonight to provide an update. The bad news, Fuller is no longer involved with the Crystal Lake series. The good news, that doesn't mean A24 is giving up hope on the project. He says right here, for reasons beyond our control, A24 has elected to go a different way with the material. We hope the final product will be something that Friday the 13th fans all over the world will enjoy. So, John, thoughts on the A24 Crystal Lake series as a whole and the kind of the different direction that they plan on going?
I think the Crystal Lake series, we're going to get it no matter what happens. I think A24 is committed to this project. I mean, whoever they might replace the showrunners a couple times. I don't really care as long as they're not declaring it dead. Even if they do declare it dead, if somebody else were to pick it up, we need this TV series. It's been so long. It's been 15 years since we've had an original Friday the 13th property in theaters or anywhere like that. So I think we're ready for it. I think 15 years is enough time to pass that this is like fresh for a new generation of horror fans. Obviously, when you do people are doing polls online, Friday the 13th is ranking dead last as enjoyable. I don't agree with that at all. It's my favorite franchise.
I kind of see it though.
We need a push. Friday the 13th, if that's the way the public is polling about Friday the 13th, we need Crystal Lake. We need A24. Obviously, the video game gave us, something to span the gap a little bit, but we need this series and we need it as soon as possible. So A24, please figure it out.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I was interested to see what they were going to do with the Pamela, because this was supposed to be a prequel series that kind of showed Pamela Voorhees, but I don't think a lot of people care about that. Like, when you think of Friday the 13th, you don't think of Pamela Voorhees. I mean, she is in the background, but you think of Jason. And
I mean, you would think the same thing about the Bates Motel series. We don't care about Norman Bates as a teenager, but that series, that was awesome.
Difference is we care about Norman Bates because he's in all the original movies. He's in the first 4 movies, so we're following a character that has gotten movies in the past. Pamela only really has 1 movie, and she's in the last 15 minutes of the movie. She actually shows up in the last 15 minutes of the original movie. But I'm kind of interested to see what that new direction that A24 is going to take, because if it's going to be, all right, because the great thing about A24 is that they write really good characters that you care about. So if they can take that, maybe something like an X, if they take the characters from X, develop them, and then you have Jason who is stalking them and, killing them off, then you're going to care about them throughout the entire show.
Well, you could do it. There's a couple different ways you could do it, right? If we get the prequel season of the 50s when Jason drowns, I'm cool with that. That's compelling, whatever. But if they're going to go a different direction where they're just going through the Friday the 13th, And I would say what they should do is you could do like how 24 used to do it, and every episode is in real time. And
Ooh, that'd be interesting.
just do like one of the things where like it spans an hour of time, and like if it's eight episodes, it'll be like from sundown to sunrise. Like that would be a cool series of episodes.
Okay.
Good idea. A24, feel free to steal that. Just credit me. However they want to do it. If they want to create like a rich mythology around Crystal Lake and Voorhees family and that, I'm fine with that as well. If they want to just make it like, just pulp and slasher, also cool with it. I think A24 has proven they can do either, in the whole. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at again. I brought up X. I think X is a good slasher film, but it's a slasher film that makes you care about the characters that are in there. If they can do that with the characters of Crystal Lake, and not only just our final girl, but like maybe everybody gets a character development, because you have 8 to 10 hours to tell, a really good story, and then the last 3 episodes is Jason hunting them down. Then it's going to be a great TV show because you're constantly worried about these characters that you like, compared to some of the sequels of this franchise where you don't care about any of the characters and them dying doesn't really have an effect on you personally.
Yeah, I think what they could do is if they can keep, because obviously if it's a Friday the 13th series, a lot of people are going to be tuning in to watch people get killed, right?
Yeah.
So they always pad these movies. There's always like, like the hitchhiker in part 4 or the cop in part 2. There's always somebody you can always just kill somebody. So I think in the earlier episodes we'll get like, these dipshits just stumbling in the path of Jason. But then in later episodes, you're getting the characters we care about will start getting killed. That's fine. I'm okay with that as well. Again, A24, they have done TV before and they do great movies. So like I'm not worried as long as they figure it out.
So let's get to the obvious real quick before we move on. Brian Fuller, do you think this is he left the project because of creative differences, or do you think that these allegations that have come out have some sort of effect on him leaving the project?
I think anytime there's allegations of anything, whether it's like, inappropriate conduct or even going all the way down to just being like verbally haughty to people, like if that news even gets out, if it's not like a kumbaya environment, like, you're going to be off the project. It's just the way it is. I think people not only want to feel safe, but they want to feel like supported. So I think if you have any kind of toxicity in your creative environment, like you're not gonna. There's a reason, like there's certain brilliant showrunners that have just proven to be nightmares to work with, and they don't make TV anymore. Like that list is as long as my arm. So like it's the way it is. It's the way it is.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to our second story. Go ahead and do the
If you're just joining us, I am John Maher from Why We Love Horror. That is Hunter Chambless from Welcome to Primetime. This is horror headlines for the week of May 9th. And what's our second headline of the night?
Our second headline, again, from bloodydisgusting.com. Let me go ahead and bring this up. Mike Flanagan is in talks to direct the next Exorcist movie. Recent comment from producer Jason Blum suggests that a retool was in order when last year's The Exorcist Believer wasn't as successful as Blumhouse and Universal hoped. That certainly seems to be the case, as Deadline reports tonight that Mike Flanagan is in talks to direct the next Exorcist movie. The scoop was first reported by the Insider, Jeff Snyder. Director David Gordon Green was potentially on board to direct an entire trilogy of new movies in the franchise, with The Exorcist Believer intended to only be the first film in that 3-film sequel series. Originally set to hit theaters on April 18th, 2025, the sequel, The Exorcist Deceiver, was delayed when Green left the project. If talks come to fruition, Flanagan will take over, likely steering the franchise in a new direction. So, thoughts on Mike Flanagan in talks to direct the next Exorcist film?
I mean, I think everyone who heard this news is jumping for joy. I mean, the man is like, is it too soon to call him a legend?
No.
His TV shows, like every TV show, knocked out of the park.
Every TV show hit. Almost every movie has been like fantastic.
Exactly. Like they're all great. They're all just great. Like I don't think the guy's had he hasn't had a true miss yet. He's had like normal, like early
Stumbles.
filmmaker kind of growing pains, I guess. If you want to say Absentia is not great, fine, okay, it's still good. Like, and if that's his low point, I don't know. Like it's a great low point to have. I don't know what you would say. I don't know what you would say like Flanagan's weak spot is, but yeah. What would you say is his worst thing that he's done is?
Probably Before I Wake, and that's only because I watched it recently. But that still wasn't a bad movie.
Yeah, it's still pretty strong. Yeah, people would kill to have that be their low point. People would kill to have it be that. You know, so I mean, you attach Mike Flanagan to something now. In the wake of Dr. Sleep, in the wake of like him saving, he already saved. I mean, not that Ouija's a franchise. When you put Ouija against Ouija Origin, like he saved it.
Yeah,
like, all of his one-offs are also just great movies. So I think this is the best news. The only downfall I can think about is I don't want Mike Flanagan necessarily tagged with like, well, let's always bring in Mike Flanagan to fix it. Yeah, I don't want him to be the person. I don't want his slate to be filled with like, him cleaning up everybody's mistakes for the rest of his life. Like this, if he does this, let's stop. He's proven the point. Just how about the rest of you stop fucking up beloved franchises? That's what we need.
Yeah. So I got really excited for this, and for one reason only. The Haunting of Hill House was the best possession thing I've ever seen. And I don't really like possession movies that much, but the way he took those characters and made it character focused, character driven, and then the horror of that came from you knowing the family and then seeing shit in the background, stuff that wasn't like a jump scare on the screen, but something you would have to go back and rewatch and notice a figure in the back or notice, something hanging around the walls that you didn't notice before. So him taking that and adding that to a franchise like The Exorcist, which is very, very scary. The original one was really good. Hell, I'm wearing an Exorcist shirt right now. But if he could take that Haunting of Hill House idea and mix it with a little bit of Midnight Mass, of his like talks of religion and things like that The Exorcist is always rooted in, that's a perfect mixture right there.
Well, understand, like he's not going to have like a full television series to work with here. We don't want to have like a 3-hour epic Exorcist.
I mean, I would take a 3-hour Mike Flanagan movie.
I think that's a tall order to ask, coming off of what David Gordon Green did with the Devil Power Rangers in Exorcist Believer. Like, I think we need to say. I mean, if we're going to get a third movie and you're going to keep Mike Flanagan on, I think maybe you don't go berserk. I think you just do a nice, tight Exorcist story because you still got the McNeil family are still alive at the end of Exorcist Believer. You could refocus the story with Reagan coming back. Somehow, I think if you keep all the components there, you have the bones of a great story. All the characters are there. I think you let him use all the weapons in his arsenal to write a new story. I think with Mike Flanagan at the helm, just let him do whatever he wants. Yeah, no notes for this guy. Let him do whatever he needs to do with The Exorcist.
So
in the chat, so feel free to drop your opinions on Mike Flanagan taking over the Exorcist franchise. Hunter, what were you saying?
So is it said that he's going to direct the actual sequel, Deceiver, or is this just a retooling where he could do something different with the Exorcist franchise? Because I don't know if they said he was directing Deceiver. Or
Exorcist Deceiver is just a title. I mean, it's not tied to anything. There's no treatment. There's no synopsis that's been released. So they can keep that title and they can just make the movie about whatever the hell they want. It's just a word at this point. Like let Flanagan cook. Like any scripts, any treatments they've done, just scrap them. Let him do it. There is source material, right? But we're past the source material already. As long as you're honoring the source material and not retconning things that were in the original book, I think you're going to be fine.
Yeah. So I just hope that Blumhouse lets him cook. Just leave him alone. Don't get involved with anything. Just let him do what he needs to do because once you get studio involvement, I don't know how good this movie is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, Blumhouse obviously has a reputation. Again, fingers crossed that they don't screw up Speak No Evil. If they screw up Speak No Evil, that's going to be a huge black mark. And like then I will doubt that maybe even like would they even fuck with Mike Flanagan? I hope not. I really, really hope not.
I don't think they.
Yeah, it would be a very, very bad thing if they did that. But yeah, but overall positive. Attaching Flanagan to anything is an overall positive, regardless of the.
Oh yeah.
Like, let's go. Go ahead and do it. So,
Dude,
if you're just joining us,
excited.
I am John Maher from Marvel of Horror. That is Hunter Chambless from Welcome to Primetime. This is Horror Headlines for the week of May 9th. And we just talked about Exorcist Believer. We just talked about the Friday the 13th television series potentially coming down the road. What's our third topic of the evening, Hunter?
So, if you guys didn't know, The Strangers Chapter 1 has already screened for people. It screened last night, and we have the first reactions to this film. Let's go ahead and bring it up right here. The Strangers Chapter 1 has screened to see what people are saying about the horror reboots. So, let's see. This one comes from Raven Bruner, who says The Strangers Chapter 1 is a downright terrifying gore fest. While it sadly lacks the indie charm of the original, that'll be the least of your worries once the bloodshed starts. Meh characters, but interesting direction and plenty of mindless violence. Great time. We're so back, baby. Then we have the hashtag show that said The Strangers Chapter 1 is a stellar addition to the legacy. It brilliantly pays homage to the original while carving its own path. Finally, a spine-chilling horror film worth the wait. But that wasn't, we do have some great reviews, but we also have some ones that are not so good, about to say the least. This one comes from Shannon McGraw of Nightmarish. The Strangers Chapter 1 completely misses the mark. It lacks the dread, suspense, and realism that made the first film so terrifying, in favor of cheap jump scares and pretty people. This is definitely a film that's more veered to the CW crowd. So some people are loving it, some people are not liking it. Thoughts on the reaction to The Strangers Chapter 1?
I feel like when you cover a news story like this, it's kind of like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, right? If they did adhere to the basically pay homage to Brian Bertino's The Strangers, they would have just been like, oh, this is just the same shit. It's the same movie, right? So, but then they try to flare it up. They try to make it a little flashier for a 2024 crowd. And some people are like, oh, it's got none of the charm of the original. So, like, honestly, not that The Strangers is like a beloved property. It's a property that people like. They like it. I've never heard anybody like, I hate The Strangers. Strangers Pray at Night, different story. But The Strangers,
I actually liked it. The second one I thought was really fun.
I think it's fine too. But I can see people just like not liking it because they're going to constantly compare it to The Strangers. I think the trick to doing any Strangers movies is you have to kind of keep a hand on The Strangers and work from there. And by the trailers that I've seen, it looks like they're doing that. There's a lot of familiar beats, but yet the people are going to want a higher body count. In the original Strangers, 2 people die and one of them is an accident. Like,
yeah.
Like the Scott Speedman dies and Glenn Howerton gets shot, and that's it. That's the whole movie. So if you are going to have like them be in a town and like just some random passerbys are getting slaughtered, great. That's fine. That is more in tune with what we're being told. So I'm not going to have the problems that some of these people have. If it is jump scare reliant, I think most people are going to comment on that. Though it seems like the tone of The Strangers in general, there is a dread. Whether people are going to recognize it or not, maybe you're just cold and turned off to the horrors of the world. But I feel that the concept invokes dread regardless. It'll remain. It's coming out in a few weeks. We'll know more then. How are you feeling about The Strangers Chapter
1? It's interesting that this movie is getting mixed reviews. I mean, some people really love it. Some people don't like it. The one thing that I'm cautiously optimistic on, and it's kind of the way I don't want them to go with this planned trilogy. I don't want them to dive deep into the psyche or the reasonings why the Strangers do what they do. because the creepy thing about the original movie was that it was just a random home invasion, and that they even say because you were home, like it wasn't planned. It was just something that they were spurred on the moment type thing, and that's scarier than they escaped from a mental institution and they were already crazy. I don't want them to ruin the suspense of the Strangers franchise because they want to tell this kind of backstory that they don't really need to tell.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You don't need a backstory. Like the whole property is that we don't know, and the mystery is scary. Like some people are just evil. Some people are just sadists. Like that's totally a fine route to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm interested to see chapter 1 because I do like the original Strangers, and if they kind of keep the same tone that the original one had and up the gore and up the violence, then I'll be happy.
Yeah, the only real criticism you can level knowing nothing is, doing a prequel trilogy, it puts you in like wrong turn territory where like that these three, unless these are masks that are passed between people, right? Like these are the same strangers from the first movie, and these people won't die unless they introduce like, oh yeah, when we kill, pinup, we just get a new pinup. If they're going to do a free from hell thing, that would be fine. But I'm not giving them any ideas, but feel free to use my ideas.
That's actually not a bad idea. I would like the idea that like maybe the whole town is in on it, and like when outsiders come in, they see that as a kind of a breach of their privacy. So then they send different people in those masks to kind of ward them off, to keep their town closed.
That would kind of like that would make sense, I guess, but then it would kind of like invalidate Strangers Prey at Night because clearly like there's a recreational vehicle park where people go all the time.
To be fair, I don't think this trilogy is supposed to tie into the original. I think it's just supposed to be its own trilogy. So if you want to do it that way and just kind of, because they're pretty much redoing in chapter 1, they're redoing the events of the original Strangers. So it's supposed to be like a rebooted.
I thought this was all supposed to be before the Strangers. It's
not. No, it's its own thing. So
it's a reboot.
If they want to, So if they wanted to make it to where the town is all in on it and are taking out people who are vacationing there, that could be a way of taking the franchise and kind of turning it on its head, where you think it's just these 3 random people, but it's actually the town that's
such a jagged edge plot where it's like, yeah, we're just indiscriminately killing anybody in this 5-mile radius, and hopefully the cops don't catch on to us.
But that's the thing, the cops are in on it because they work for the town.
Even then, like I think if that is your plot in any movie, like you have to explain that away, because even if that is not a sustainable measure in any capacity, no matter who's in on it, because it's going to go up the chain to a point that something has to come crashing down on the conspiracy.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's fine. We've talked enough about the Strangers. So again, if you're just joining us, I am John Maher from My Will of Horror. That is Hunter Chambless from Welcome to Primetime. This is Horror Headlines for your week of May 9th. What's our next headline, Hunter?
Right from BloodydDisgusting.com. A new horror movie called Violence, an 80s opera punk rock thriller to star Rowan Campbell and Maddie Hatson. Upcoming indie genre pick Violence, described as an opematic punk rock thriller, has found its lead in Halloween Inn star Rowan Campbell and Malignant Maddie Hansen. Deadline reports today. Connor Marston is set to direct the thriller from a script written by Marston, William Woods, and Devin Myler. Violence is set in an alternate 1980s. We find our anti-hero, Henry Violence, caught in the middle of an intensifying drug war. The 80s set thriller will be scored by Nowhere to Run, comprised of numbers of the 2-time Grammy Award nominated band Code Orange. So thoughts on the Violence plot and Rowan Campbell and Maddie Hansen starring?
I don't mind it. I think a lot of people are very negative on Halloween Ends. I don't think anybody's ready.
I like it.
I like it too, but like I'm not allowed to have that opinion in public most of the time. I think a lot of like horror fans and horror fans like dislike Rowan Campbell after Halloween ends. I think they have a bad taste in their mouth. So if you're going to have him lead a movie, it's a very calculated risk you're taking, I guess. It better be a great movie because a lot of people won't see it based on the fact that they hated Halloween Ends. And
I will
Maddie
say he is the best part of Halloween Ends, though. He's really good in that movie.
That's one man's opinion, and I agree with that. I do like I like Corey's storyline, but like I am in the minority. And then I guess Maddie Hansen, is she the sister in *Malignant*?
Yeah, she's the sister in *Malignant*.
Cool, like great. I'm glad she's in this. I'm glad she's getting work. The plot sounds fine. It's kind of sounds like the plot to VFW, I guess, in a way. Like some people are caught in the middle of a drug war. But cool. I mean, if it's just like a violent kind of like action horror movie, I mean, we're ready for one of those. I mean, like, why not? I mean, but again, the cast doesn't like blow me away right now. I think if there was a movie in between Halloween Ends and here for Rowan Campbell and between here for Maddie Hansen, where they've shown that they can make a movie that's universally liked, not even loved, universally liked. I think you have more star power from there. But it just feels like an announcement of a horror movie to me. I'll see it, but it'll remain to be seen. This doesn't feel like a popular movie.
Yeah. So the reason I have it on here is because I do want to talk about more indie horror films as well, just to get some people's attention to it. But also, I think Rowan Campbell, if I remember correctly, a lot of people did like his performance in Halloween Ends. They just didn't like Halloween Ends in general. I think
the fact that it shifted away from Michael Myers, right? Like he's not the real.
Yeah.
He's only one of the killers, I guess, in that movie. Like they had to direct that like visceral anger towards somebody, and Rowan Campbell got a ton of that heat blown on him.
Stupid. That's so stupid, man. Because again, Robert Pattinson, somebody who was in Twilight. Was he good in Twilight? No, but he was good in Harry Potter before then. So you can't say that
Harry Potter movie.
He was good in that Harry Potter movie. But what I'm saying is you can't blame an actor for a shitty script. Because if you watch Pattinson or Kristen Stewart, she's doing a new vampire movie as well, and people are excited because they've seen her in other, indie horror films before. So you can't really blame an actor for a script because they didn't write the script. Like
it's not even that we're blaming him for that script. It's just that there's nothing else to draw from. It's not like Rowan Campbell like 10 movies and Halloween Ends was one of them.
Yeah.
The filmography is much smaller, and one of the movies happens to be Halloween Ends. Same thing with Maddie Hansen. Like, yeah, she's fine in *Malignant*. It's great, but she's not the main character.
Yeah. All right, so I guess we can't really get into much because we don't know what the kind of the full script is, but I'm excited for this one. I like movies that harken back to the 80s. I like that aesthetic, that feel. And if they can give us a really cool, as you said, action horror movie that is set in the 80s with this kind of drug war background, that could be a really fun movie.
Well, yeah, there's two different kinds of 80s movies, right? Like you can have like a Totally Killer, which is like, campy.
So good.
Like Back to the Future 80s movies, or you could harken. If we're gonna do like a gritty 80s movie and make it be like like
RoboCop,
like RoboCop, but RoboCop's set in the future, but like a gritty, like I'm trying to think of like a gritty 80s movie. Like even when you see like where Daniel LaRusso lives in The Karate Kid, like there were still like low class neighborhoods like in the 80s. Like if we're doing that kind of like gritty violence there, sure. Or like turn of the decade New York City, like where Times Square is still like like a porn hub with like prostitutes and pimps hanging out. Yeah, okay. Like, so we haven't really gotten all the 80s homages we get in horror are all like Pac-Man, Big Jackets, arcade game bullshit. We've never gotten like a gritty 1980, 1981 like the Warriors type shit horror movie. I think
Maxine is going to give us a little bit of that.
Because Maxine's giving us the Night Stalker. Yeah, so if it's like a Maxine type 80s, yes.
Yeah.
Like you're still getting the glitz and glamour, but it's dangerous out there.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine.
All right, so let's move on to our final topic. Go ahead.
And again, station identification. I'm John Maher from Why We Love Horror. That's Hunter Chambless. Welcome to Primetime. This is Horror Headlines for the week of May 9th. What's the final headline of the night, Hunter?
All right, so again from bloodydisgusting.com. Let me go ahead and bring this up. Bam. In a violent nature, Retro Lobby Card teases slasher movie's unrated theatrical release. Like Damien Leone's Terrifier 2 before it, upcoming slasher movie In a Violent Nature is being released in the theaters on May 31st in its unrated form, we've learned this morning. The unique art house slasher movie frames the slayings from the killer's perspective, and audiences have already been losing their minds at the gory kills during the preview screenings. IFC Films will release In a Violent Nature exclusively in theaters on May 31st, 2024, and you can expect the film to make its at-home debut on streaming service Shudder soon after. So this is the idea of the movie. In the film, when a locket is removed from a collapsed fire tower in the woods that entombs the rotten corpse of Johnny, a vengeful spirit spurred on by a horrific 60-year-old crime, his body is resurrected and becomes hell-bent on retrieving it. The undead golem hones in on the group of vacationing teens responsible for the theft and proceeds to methodically slaughter them one by one in his mission to get it back, along with anyone in his way. So thoughts on In a Violent Nature getting an unrated theatrical cut?
Yeah, I've been seeing the trailer for In a Violent Nature for a long time now, and I do know some people that have seen it. I'm not going to say reviews are mixed, but they're not 100% positive. I don't know if that is a rated cut. Given how they're promoting this movie, I feel an unrated cut is probably the best thing they could do. I don't know if you heard the story, and I can't confirm whether it's a rumor or it's true, that people were like getting sick and vomiting during screenings of this
Terrifier 2.
Yeah, which is great. So yeah, I'm psyched for it. Like I like a color by number slasher movie, and this being shot basically like as a third person shooter is great. I'm totally for it. Like I'm going in with high expectations, and I think they will be met. But I feel with the feedback I'm hearing, this movie will not be for everybody. That's all I'm going to say. But I feel like I'm going to like it.
All right. So for me, I'm iffy on these type of movies. I love a really good slasher. But unlike you, John, I don't really like the kind of I spit on your grave, the torture, the realistic torture type horror movies. But I know a lot of people do. When done well, I appreciate them. I think Last House on the Left is done perfectly, the original one. But this idea of us following the killer from his point of view, and that he's kind of a resurrected killer, is a great twist on this. So it's not just like a realistic killer. Like they're going kind of over the top. They're going really gory. I'm definitely going to check it out because I do like giving stuff chances. I'm not as hyped for this movie as you are, but maybe if I see trailers, then my hype will kind of start growing more and more.
Fair enough. I think this movie, I'm definitely going to see it. It wasn't on my most anticipated list when the year turned over, only because it wasn't getting promoted hard then. But since the year's gone on, it's crept onto my list. I definitely am going to see this. I feel I will like it unless they like totally drop the ball. I'm not putting it in the same category as like I Spit on Your Grave or like any kind of exploitation film. It might like toe the line of exploitation, but I feel like it's just going to be like a splattery slasher kind of movie, like Hatchet, kind of like Hatchet, but not funny. Like that's how it feels. It feels like Hatchet, but not funny, which is kind of what I want out of the movie.
Or like like an original Wrong Turn, where it's got that kind of grittiness, but it's not like over the top, like a I Spit on Your Grave type one.
Like a brutality. Like it's not like exploitational, but it will be brutal. I'm okay with that. That's fine.
Awesome. So yeah, I definitely got to watch the trailer. So yeah, guys, that's all our news topics for the day. John, do you have any questions over on or comments over on the TikTok?
Well, TikTok, nothing's really going over on TikTok right now. I don't know if we have any comments coming through the Facebook or the YouTube. Anybody commenting over there?
I do not see any. I know we have a lot of live viewers coming from X, so thank you for joining us. We have 11 people over on X, some people watching on the Facebook. So yeah, I mean, if you guys have any questions or any comments, go ahead and put them in the TikTok.
And if not, we'll just wrap it up, and we'll be back next week with we'll be next week on the 16th for more horror headlines. But we'll keep the chat open here on TikTok. You can comment on the Facebook, you can comment on the YouTube. Those comments will go to Hunter. We can talk about it then. Are there any horror stories you know about that we missed? We'll be happy to just riff on those as well. Feel free to throw your comments out. Otherwise, we will be back next week. Same horror time, same horror channel.
All right, guys. Remember, stay scared.
All right, later. Got the outro?
Oh, right. Sorry.